The silence on the bridge of the Star Treader was no longer the quiet of order, but the stillness that follows a storm that has reshaped the landscape. Commander Kale stared at the planet on the view screen. It looked the same blue-green, swirling with white clouds. But he knew it was not the same. He could still feel the ghost of its emotions in his chest, a warmth like a fading sunbeam. He looked at his hands, the hands that had been ready to give a command of destruction. They felt foreign to him now. He turned to his crew. Their faces were pale, their eyes wide with a mixture of awe, confusion, and a dawning, uncomfortable humility. They were disciplined Tevori, trained to value logic above all. But logic had just been flooded by a truth too big for it to hold. "Recall all personnel from the surface," Kale ordered, his voice quieter than usual, stripped of its absolute certainty. "No shuttles. No scans. Maintain orbit, but be still." It was the only word he could think of. Dr. Vora approached him. The clinical detachment was gone from her eyes, replaced by a raw, hungry wonder. "They did not broadcast a signal, Commander. They amplified a state of being. They acted as a focal point. The planetary consciousness, the biosphere, and the humans, they are not separate. The colonists are like neurons in a larger brain. We just felt a thought." Kale absorbed this. Neurons in a brain. It made the humans not primitive, but integrated in a way his civilization had never dreamed of. "What do we do, Doctor?" "Our purpose here was contact and assessment." "How do we assess that?" Vora looked back at the planet. "We do not assess. We ask to learn." Down on Eden's threshold, the colonists slowly rose from their circle. The deep, shared connection faded, leaving behind a profound tiredness, but also a quiet relief. The sense of imminent danger from above had passed. They felt a shift, a retreat of cold fear, replaced by a tentative, fragile curiosity from orbit. Jin took a deep, shuddering breath and looked at Mina. She nodded, her face grim but satisfied. They felt it. "Now what?" "Now," Jin said, "we see if they are willing to talk. Really talk." Hours later, a single small shuttle descended from the ship. It did not come to the main clearing. It sat down at the very edge of the colony, near the path to the Harpwood, a gesture of caution and respect. The ramp extended, and only two figures emerged, Commander Kale and Dr. Vora. They wore simple uniforms, no environmental suits, no visible weapons. Their body language was stiff, but not with aggression. It was with the awkwardness of someone entering a holy place for the first time. Jin and Mina walked out to meet them, followed by Tay and little Sumi, who peered from behind her mother's legs. The two groups stopped a few paces apart. Kale was the first to speak. He did not use grand titles. "Jin, we have come to understand we were wrong." The words seemed difficult, but necessary. "We felt something. We do not have the science for it. We do not have the words." Jin nodded. Understanding often starts when words fail. "You are welcome. Again." Dr. Vora stepped forward, her eyes fixed on Tay. "You, in the valley. You were the conduit. How?" Tay looked at Jin, who nodded. Tay then simply knelt and placed his palm on the soil. He closed his eyes. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, a single slender vine from a nearby tree slowly uncurled. It grew, not with the speed of a threat, but with the gentle pace of a reaching hand. It extended towards Vora, a small, luminous blue flower budding and blooming at its tip. The flower stopped just before her. It was an offering. Vora's breath caught. She slowly, hesitantly, reached out and touched the flower's petal. A soft, vivid sensation of welcome flowed up her finger. A simple, clean feeling without words. A tear traced a path down her gray cheek. "It's real," she whispered. Sumi let go of her mother and walked up to Commander Kale. She looked up at his tall, imposing figure. He looked down at her, unsure. "Your inside is all buzzy," Sumi said, her nose wrinkling. "Like a broken light. It's better than before, though. Before it was a loud buzzy. Now it's a confused buzzy." Kale, the commander of a starship, knelt on one knee to be level with the child. "How do you know that, little one?" Sumi shrugged. "I just feel it. Everyone feels it. You just have to listen." She pointed to his chest. "You have to listen in there, not just in here." She tapped her own head. It was a child's simplicity, but it struck Kale with the force of a fundamental law. They had spent centuries listening with their minds, with their machines. They had forgotten how to listen with everything else. "We would like to learn," Kale said, looking up at Jin. "Not about your technology. About this. If you will teach us." Jin offered a small, genuine smile. "We cannot teach you a sense you do not have. But we can show you how to be quiet enough to discover if you have always had it and just never listened. It will be slow. It will not fit in your reports." Over the following days, a new kind of first contact began. Tavori scientists came down, but they left their scanners in the shuttle. They sat in the gardens, trying to still their racing minds. They walked with guides like Tay, learning to see the forest not as a collection of resources, but as a community. They struggled. Their minds, trained for analysis, constantly fought against the passive act of perception. But slowly, hints emerged. A Devori botanist, after sitting for hours by the singing stream, suddenly burst into tears, explaining she had felt the water's journey from cloud to ocean as a story of joyful purpose. A young Tavori engineer, helping Ben repair a fence, felt a surge of profound satisfaction as the last joint fit into place, a satisfaction that was not just his own, but seemed echoed by the wood itself. Commander Kyle spent most of his time with Jin, often in silence. One evening, as the twin moons rose, Jin handed him a smooth stone from the riverbed. "Don't think about it," Jin said. "Just feel its story." Kale held the cold, wet stone. At first, he felt nothing. Just a rock. He fought the urge to analyze its composition. He just held it. And then, a faint impression seeped into him, not an image, but a sense of deep time, of patient endurance, of being shaped by gentle water over millennia. It was a whisper compared to the shout he had felt from orbit, but it was undeniable. It was the universe, speaking a language older than words. A week after their arrival as conquerors, the two Vori prepared to leave. They could not stay. Their ship, their society, was a loud, bright, sharp-edged thing in this soft, whispering world. To remain would be a disturbance. At a final gathering, Kale spoke to the assembled colonists. "We came here thinking we had everything to give you. We were wrong. You have shown us a direction we did not know existed. We will not speak of weapons or technology when we report to our Commonwealth. We will speak of a new sense. We will send not soldiers, but philosophers. Not engineers, but poets. If you will accept them." Jin nodded. "They will be welcome. The first lesson is always the same." He placed a hand over his own heart and then pointed to the ground. "Listen." As the Star Treader powered its engines and began to pull away from the orbit of Eden's threshold, Commander Kale stood on the bridge for the last time. The planet shrank to a blue-green jewel, then a star, then a point of light among countless others, but he carried a piece of it with him. The confused, buzzing noise inside him had begun to settle into a quieter hum. He knew they would return to a galaxy that would think them mad. They would struggle to explain. But they had a new mission now, more important than any map or resource. They had felt a heartbeat. And once you have felt the heartbeat of a living world, you can never again see the universe as a cold, dead machine. Dr. Vora stood beside him, her data slate now filled not with sensor logs, but with personal notes, feelings, and questions. She was no longer just a scientist. She was a student of a vast new science. What do we call it? She asked quietly, looking at the star that was no longer just a star. Cale thought for a moment, remembering a child's words. "We don't call it anything yet," he said. "First, we learn how to listen." The silence in the Tevori shuttle, returning from the Heartwood Valley, was thicker than the mist they had fled. No one spoke. The soldiers sat stiffly in their harnesses, their eyes staring ahead, not seeing the plush interior. The forceful, empathic echo of the planet's sorrow still vibrated in their bones. One of them was quietly shaking. Commander Cale stared at his own reflection in the dark viewport. He saw the face of a leader, a rational being of order and logic. But the reflection felt like a lie now. He had aimed a weapon at a feeling and watched his power vanish. His mind kept replaying the moment, the light, the images, the crushing weight of an alien sadness that had nothing to do with battle damage or psychological warfare. It was simply an emotion, vast and pure, and it had disabled his unit more completely than any enemy fleet. Dr. Vora sat beside him, her data slate dark on her lap. Her fingers trembled slightly. Her entire career was built on the principle that the universe was a complex but ultimately knowable machine. Today, she had stood inside a sentient piece of that universe. It was like a gear suddenly speaking poetry. The scientific shock was profound, but deeper still was a personal, terrifying awe. They were not the advanced ones here. They were the children, screaming in a library. The shuttle docked with the Star Treader. The usual efficient bustle of the bay was absent. Word had already spread. The survey team walked through the corridors like ghosts, met with silent, uneasy stares from the crew. In the command center, Cale went straight to the main tactical display. The planet hung there, blue and green, deceptively peaceful. The valley was a soft, blurry patch on the continent below, still unreadable by their sensors. That blur was now the most terrifying thing he had ever encountered. "Report, Commander?" His second-in-command asked, her voice careful. Cale did not turn. "The valley contains a non-biological consciousness. It is planetary, or at least regional. It is aware. It reacted to our presence with emotion. It neutralized a weapon discharge passively." He forced the words out, each one tasting of ashdot. A murmur of disbelief rippled through the bridge crew. A consciousness? Emotion? These were not tactical terms. Is it a threat? The second pressed. It perceived our fear and our weapons as a loud, painful noise. Its response was distress, not an attack. But its distress is... He struggled, functionally disabling. Dr. Vora found her voice. It was hoarse. It's not a threat in any intentional sense. It is an environment. But our presence, our state of being, is toxic to it. And its response is toxic to us. We are incompatible. Cale finally turned, his face hardening. The confusion was coalescing into a familiar, cold purpose: control. An unintentional threat is still a threat. Phenomenon represents a chaos we cannot allow. If it can disable a trained soldier with a feeling, what could it do to a population? It is an existential risk. The human colony is clearly symbiotic with it. They are part of the system. That makes them part of the risk. A terrible familiar logic was taking hold. The unknown must be contained or eliminated. Order must be preserved. Prepare the orbital bombardment array, Cale said, his voice returning to its usual steely command. Target the anomalous zone. A single, precise kinetic strike. We will sever the nerve center. The rest of the planet may be preserved for study. The crew jumped to action, relief flooding them as they returned to clear procedures, to buttons and commands they understood. Down on the surface, Jin knew something was wrong the moment the wind shifted. He was in the central garden. The leaves of the whispering willows, which usually danced in a gentle breeze, were now perfectly still. Then they all turned as one, pointing straight up towards the sky where the Tivori ship orbited. A deep sense of alarm, not his own, spread through the ground like a cold shudder. Mina ran up to him, her face pale. The water in the channels? It's flowing backwards. The children are crying, and they don't know why. Something has scared the world, Jin. Jin looked up, his heart sinking. He had feared this. The Tuvori had not listened. They had shouted, and the valley had shown them its heart. Now they would try to cut it out. Gather everyone, Jin said, his voice urgent but calm. At the old stones, now. As the colonists streamed towards the circle of ancient moss-covered monoliths at the colony's heart, Jin climbed to the highest point, a flat rock overlooking the gathering. He saw their frightened faces, Ben the farmer, young Sumi clinging to her mother, Tae, who had just returned, his eyes full of the valley's pain. They are above, Jin said, pointing to the sky. They are afraid of what they felt. They will try to silence it. We cannot fight their ship. We cannot stop their weapons. What do we do? Mina asked, her practical mind seeking a solution where none seemed to exist. We do the only thing we can, Jin said. We listen, and we ask the world to listen with us. We show them the song, not the shout. We show them the connection, not the fear. He sat down on the rock, crossing his legs. He placed his palms flat on the stone, still warm from the sun. He closed his eyes. He did not pray. He did not focus his will. He simply opened himself. He remembered the first seed he planted here, the taste of the first clean water, the joy of his daughter's first steps on this soil. He let the love for this place, not as a possession, but as a home and a partner, fill him. One by one, the colonists sat. Mina, then Ben, then Tae. Sumi sat too, closing her eyes tight. They all reached out hands on the ground, on a tree root, on the shoulder of the person next to them. They were not a crowd anymore. They became a network, a single intent. Above, on the Star Treader, the weapons officer's hand hovered over the firing control. Kinetic projectile loaded. Target locked. Awaiting final command. Commander Kale stood before the main viewer, the planet filling the screen. On my mark. The order is, it hit the bridge first. Not a sound. Not a light dot. It was a wave of pure, serene belonging. One moment, Kale was a commander on the deck of his mighty ship. The next, he was feeling the deep, slow joy of a root finding water after a long drought. He felt the sun-warmed contentment of a stone on a hill. He felt the playful curiosity of a fish in the colony's stream, and the fierce, protective love of a parent for a child Sumi's mother brushing her hair. He felt Jin's steady reverence for the soil, Mina's pride in a well-made joint, Tae's wordless understanding of the forest's mood, and it was not an attack. It was an invitation. An overwhelming flood of experiences that were not his own, yet were being shared with a clarity that bypassed his eyes and ears and went straight into his core. It was the lived truth of 1,000 moments of harmony. On the bridge, crew members gasped. Some dropped to their knees, tears streaming down their gray cheeks. Others laughed with a joy they had forgotten. The weapons officer ripped his hands from the console as if burned. Clutching his chest, Dr. Vora experienced it as 1,000 streams of perfect, interconnected data, not cold numbers, but the living story of the planet. The growth of a tree over centuries, the journey of a raindrop from cloud to river to ocean to cloud again, the steady, patient heartbeat of the world itself. It was science as feeling, knowledge as experience. It was everything she had ever sought, delivered in a way she had never imagined. Commander Kale staggered, grabbing the command rail for support. The steel of his resolve, the certainty of his order, melted away. He was not a commander silencing a threat. He was a guest in a living home, and he had just raised his fist to his host. The shame that followed was immediate and crushing, a personal, human feeling he had been taught to suppress since childhood. The bombardment command died in his throat. The link, the transmission of feeling, slowly faded, leaving the bridge in a profound, stunned silence. The planet below was no longer a tactical image. It was a living being, and it had just spoken the only language that could cross the void between them, the language of shared existence. Kale's voice, when he finally found it, was a broken whisper. "Stand down. All weapons, stand down." He looked at Dr. Vora, his eyes wide with a shattered understanding. "They weren't hiding a weapon," he said. "They were trying to teach us a sense we don't have." Dawn on Eden's threshold was a slow, gentle washing of the world in gold and pink light. At the edge of the colony, where the cultivated fields met the wild forest, two groups stood facing each other in the cool morning air. The contrast could not have been sharper. On one side was the Tevori survey team. They wore sleek, gray environmental suits with clear, helmeted visors, though the air was perfectly breathable. They carried heavy sensor packs, drone launchers, and sampling tools that gleamed with a hard metallic sheen. At their hips were sidearms, not drawn, but prominently displayed. Commander Kale led them, his expression one of focused determination. Dr. Vora was at his side, her own scanner already active, its low hum a counterpoint to the morning bird song. On the other side stood Tay. He wore simple, durable clothes of woven fiber and leather. He carried a small satchel and a walking staff of polished heartwood. He was alone. His face was calm, his eyes watching the forest edge as if listening to a distant, familiar sound. "This is your guide?" Kale asked, his translator filtering the disbelief. "A single, unarmed individual?" "Tay knows the heartwood," Jin said, who stood with Mina a few paces back. "He will keep you safe if you follow his lead." "Our suits and equipment will keep us safe," Kale replied. He gestured to his team. "Move out. Standard exploratory formation. Record everything." The Chivori moved into the forest with disciplined, mechanical steps. Their boots crunched on the undergrowth, loud and unnatural. Tay glanced at Jin, received a small nod, and then turned to follow them. He did not walk on the path they were making. He seemed to glide between the trees, his steps making no sound. The first hour was uneventful. The forest was dense and beautiful, filled with strange, fragrant flowers and trees with bark that spiraled in patterns. Dr. Vora's scanner was busy, registering incredibly rich biodiversity and those now familiar, faint energy fluctuations that seemed to emanate from the very soil. The readings grew stronger the deeper they went. "Commander," Vora said, her voice tense with excitement, "the ambient bioenergy is increasing exponentially. It's not radiating from a single source. It's everywhere. The trees, the moss, the air itself. It's like the entire ecosystem is a single low-grade power cell." "Focus on finding the core," Kale ordered. "The source of the field." Tay, walking slightly ahead, paused by a stream. The water was crystal clear, bubbling over stones that shimmered with a soft internal light. He knelt, cupped his hands, and drank. He then looked back at the Tevori and pointed to the water. "An invitation. Do not consume local biomatter without testing," Kale said sharply to his team. One of the soldiers dipped a sensor probe into the water. The readings spiked wildly. Analysis inconclusive, Commander. The water contains trace organic compounds and mineral signatures that fluctuate. It defies stable chemical modeling. Suddenly, the air changed. It grew thicker, warmer. The light filtering through the canopy took on a golden-green hue. They had entered the true beginning of the Heartwood Valley. The trees here were ancient and massive, their trunks wide enough that 10 men could not have circled them. Vines pulsed with a gentle, rhythmic light. The mist Jinn had spoken of curled around their ankles, not cold, but tingling with a faint energy. Fascinating, Thora whispered, her scanner now whirring as it tried and failed to lock onto anything. It's a localized field effect of immense complexity. It's interacting with our instruments. Then, the first sign of active phenomenon occurred. One of the Tavori soldiers, moving off the rough path to scan a cluster of glowing fungi, stepped onto a patch of soft, violet moss. The moment his boot touched it, the moss flared with a bright light. A wave of visible energy, like heat shimmer, traveled up his leg and over his suit. His sensor pack erupted in a shower of sparks. He cried out, stumbling back, "Contamination! Unknown energy surge!" He yelled "Dot" at the same time. The forest around them seemed to wake up. The pulsing light in the vines synchronized. The leaves on the trees all oriented towards the group. A deep, subsonic hum vibrated through the ground, up through their boots, and into their bones. It was not a sound heard by ears, but felt by the whole body. Defensive perimeter. Kale barked. The soldiers formed a circle, weapons now drawn, pointing at the surrounding reactive forest. Their targeting scanners danced wildly, unable to find a focal point. What is this? Some kind of automated defense system? Tay stood still in the middle of the chaos. He showed no fear. He turned to face a great tree, its bark like carved silver. He placed his bare hand directly on its surface and closed his eyes. Stop him. He's activating something. Kale shouted, but Tay wasn't activating anything. He was communicating. Or rather, he was listening, and then offering a response. The deep hum shifted in pitch. The shimmering air coalesced. Before the stunned Tavori, shapes began to form from the mist and light, not solid shapes, but impressions, like memories made visible. They saw the image of a falling star, the Tavori shuttle. They felt a pang of sharp, cold fear, Kale's suspicion. They sensed the clinical, probing curiosity, Vora's scans. The valley was reflecting their own emotions and actions back at them, translated into a sensory experience that Dr. Vora's scientific mind shattered. This was not biology. This was not physics as she knew it. This was a consciousness. The data was not being corrupted. It was being answered. Her scanner finally gave up, its screen going completely blank. Then, the focus turned to Tay. The light flowed up from the tree, through his arm, and enveloped him softly. Images blossomed around him, not of fear, but of connection. The image of Jin planting a seed, of Mina repairing a water wheel, of Su-Mi laughing as a butterfly landed on her finger. A profound, peaceful sense of belonging, of being part of a vast, slow living network, washed over the clearing. One Tavori soldier, overwhelmed, fired his weapon. The energy bolt shot towards a glowing vine. Before it could strike, the bolt simply dissipated, absorbed into the shimmering air like a raindrop into a pond. In response, a wave of tangible disappointment, deep and sorrowful as a falling mountain, pressed down on them. It was not an attack. It was an emotion so pure and powerful it brought 2 of the soldiers to their knees, not in pain, but in a grief they did not understand. Tay opened his eyes and removed his hand from the tree. The images faded. The intense light softened back to the gentle glow. The deep hum receded to a background whisper. He looked at Kale, his face still calm, You see? Tay said, his first words of the day. His simple translator conveyed the meaning. It is not a weapon. It is alive. And you are shouting at it. Commander Kale stood frozen, his weapon hanging limp in his hand. Every logical protocol, every rule of engagement was useless. You could not negotiate with a forest. You could not threaten a valley. Yet he had just seen it think, feel, and respond. His orderly universe had a hole torn in it, and through that hole poured something vast, ancient, and utterly beyond his comprehension. Dr. Vora slowly sank to the ground, not caring about the moss. She stared at her blank scanner, then at her own hands. The human had been the conduit. The valley had spoken through him. Her life's work, the framework of her understanding, lay in pieces around her. The truth was not a mechanism. It was a mind, and it had been watching them since the moment they landed. The two Vori did not leave. The Star Treader hung in high orbit, a silent, watchful moon. On the surface, the human colony of Eden's threshold continued its rhythms. But the air now held a new tension of thin, electric hum of alien observation. Commander Kale ordered a full-spectrum scan of the Heartwood Valley. From orbit, the results were frustrating. The valley appeared as a swirling soup of energy signatures that defied categorization. It registered as a minor thermal hotspot, a bizarre electromagnetic storm, and a biological nexus all at once. The sensors could not penetrate the mist that clung to its entrance. It was, as Dr. Vora reported to Kale on the bridge, a zone of persistent physical ambiguity. We require ground truth, Kale stated, his voice flat. A survey team, heavily equipped. If the humans are using a natural phenomenon as a crutch for their development, we must understand it. If it is a danger, we must contain it. Down in the colony, life adjusted to the new normal. Jin and Mina walked together along a path between the irrigated rice paddies. The water reflected the twin moons. They are afraid of what they don't understand, Mina said, her practical mind already analyzing the problem. Their ship scans us 10 times an hour. They see our tools, our homes, but they are looking for a weapon or an engine. They cannot find it, so they think we are hiding it. Jin nodded, watching the dragonfly skim the water's surface. They see the leaf, but not the tree. They hear the note, but not the song. We must be patient. Understanding cannot be forced. But they are not patient, Jin, Mina replied. Look at their eyes. They have no stillness in them. She was right. The two Vori, who now moved through the colony in small escorted groups, were all sharp angles and focused intensity. They recorded everything, took minute samples of soil, water, and air, and studied the humans with a clinical detachment that felt cold. The children, initially curious, now gave them a wide berth. All except for little Sumi. Sumi was 7, with a boundless curiosity that often overrode caution. She found Dr. Vora, the alien scientist, fascinating. Vora was often seen with her scanner, pointing it at plants, rocks, and sometimes, discreetly, at the humans themselves. One afternoon, Sumai approached her as Vora studied a cluster of glowing moss on a north-facing rock. What does your box tell you about it? Sumi asked, peering at the scanner's display. Dr. Vora glanced down, surprised. The human young were usually kept away. The scanner displayed complex chemical readouts and energy fluctuations. It tells me the moss absorbs specific radiation from your sun and re-emits it as light. A simple bioluminescent process. Sumi giggled. It's not from the sun. It's happy. The rock is warm and the water drips just right. Listen. She leaned her ear close to the moss. Vora's inner eyelids blinked. Listen? It does not produce sound. Not with your ears, Sumi said, as if explaining something obvious. She then pointed towards the forest edge, where a large stag-like creature stood watching. He knows you're new. He's curious too, but his feet are unsure. The ground feels strange to him where you walk. Vora looked at the creature, then at her scanner's seismic readings. It showed nothing. The ground was geologically stable. Yet the creature did seem hesitant to step onto the path that Tavori had frequented. A coincidence, surely. Primal instinct. Later, in the colony's main meeting hall, a simple, open-walled structure Commander Kale convened a formal discussion with Jin and several other elders. Kale laid a crystalline data slate on the wooden table. It projected a hard light map of the valley, with swirling zones of conflicting data overlay. Your cooperation has been noted, Kale began, his tone diplomatic but firm. However, your explanations for the energy signatures in this valley are non-scientific. You speak of listening and balance. The Tavori Commonwealth operates on shared knowledge and verifiable fact. We must insist on investigating this valley directly. It may be a resource beneficial to all, or it may pose a risk you are not equipped to perceive. An elder named Ben, a man with weathered hands from a life of farming, spoke gently. The valley is not a thing to be investigated like a broken machine. It is a place. You enter it with respect, or you do not enter it at all. Respect is not a quantifiable shield, Kale replied, a hint of impatience in his voice. What are you protecting? Jin leaned forward, his hands resting palms down on the table. We protect nothing from you. We are trying to explain. The life here, the plants, the stones, the water, the creatures, us, it is all connected. The valley is where that connection is strongest. It is not a power source. It is a conversation. The planet is speaking. We have just learned how to be quiet enough to hear it. Dr. Vora, who was present, felt a familiar frustration. The human's words were metaphors, shadows cast by a reality they were too primitive to grasp. They had stumbled upon a complex natural energy field and woven a folklore around it. Her scientific mind itched to peel back the myth and reveal the mechanism. The universe operates on laws, Jin, Vora said. Energy, matter, force. What you describe as a conversation is likely a symbiotic relationship with a pervasive low-level energy field. Your brains may have adapted to perceive it as feeling or intuition. It is a fascinating adaptation, but it is not magic. It is biology and physics. Mina, who had been silent, spoke up. And if your biology and physics have no way to measure the feeling, does it stop existing? Your machines cannot hear the song of the world. That does not mean there is no song. The meeting ended in a polite stalemate. The Tavori would send their survey team at dawn. The humans would provide a guide, not to facilitate exploitation, but in the hope of preventing the visitors from causing harm to themselves or to the valley. That night, under the twin moons, Jin sought out a quiet man named Tay. Tay was their best guide to the Heartwood. He rarely spoke, but he understood the forest's moods like no other. He could find water in a drought, calm an agitated beast with a look, and always knew which berries were sweetest. You will go with them, Tay, Jin said, not to lead them to a secret, but to be the valley's voice. Show them what it means to be a guest. If they will see. Tay simply nodded, his eyes reflecting the moonlight. He touched the trunk of the great tree beside Jin's home, a slow, deliberate gesture. The leaves above them rustled softly, though there was no wind. High above, on the Star Treader, Commander Kale reviewed the plans for the survey. The team would be armed, equipped with the best sensors and environmental suits. They would map, sample, and analyze. He was convinced the valley held the key to the human's peculiar serenity, a serenity he viewed as complacency. There was a truth hidden in that mist, a truth made of matter and energy, and he would have it. Order would be brought to this ambiguous, whispering world. Dr. Vora, in her quarters, stared at the data from Sumei's interaction with the moss and the stag. The correlation was zero. The child's statements were objectively untestable. And yet, a seed of doubt had been planted. What if their science, for all its precision, was blind to an entire spectrum of existence? The thought was as unsettling as the mysterious energy readings themselves. Tomorrow, she would walk into the source of those readings. She told herself she would find a logical answer. She had to. The alternative was a universe far stranger and far less orderly than she was prepared to accept. The great vessel cut through the silence between stars, a wedge of dark metal and colder intent. It was the Star Treader, flagship of the Tovori exploration fleet. Inside, Commander Kale studied the data stream from the forward sensors. His posture was rigid, his gray skin smooth and unreadable. The Tovori were seekers of order, of logical expansion. They mapped, they cataloged, and they assessed. This sector was blank on their charts, a patch of unimportant darkness. Or so it had been. Anomaly confirmed, said the science officer, Dr. Vora, her voice a calm monotone. The third planet of the system shows not only a breathable atmosphere and lush biosphere, but also structured energy signatures, inconsistent with natural geological activity. Kale's inner eyelids blinked horizontally. Defined structured, geometric thermal patterns. Regular light emissions during the planetary night cycle. It suggests habitation. A ripple of focused interest went through the command bridge. Habitation meant a new species to index, resources to note, a potential new member for the Tovori Commonwealth, or a problem to be contained. Take us into high orbit, Kale ordered. Full passive scans. Do not announce our presence. As the Star Treader settled into the gravity well of the world, its crew designated PT-8893. The planet filled their viewports. It was a stunning mosaic of blue oceans, green continents, and swirling white clouds. The scans refined. The energy signatures resolved into clusters. Not one large city, but dozens of small, scattered settlements. The largest was a modest collection of structures near a river delta on the primary continent. Technology level appears low, Dr. Vora reported, her long fingers dancing over her console. No orbital infrastructure. No high-energy plasma signatures. No detectable defensive grids. Structural analysis suggests processed timber, local stone, and simple metallurgy. Their power generation seems to be thermal and hydro-based, remarkably efficient, but primitive. Kale felt a faint sense of disappointment. A pre-FTL species. It was a procedural matter now. First contact protocol would be observed. The Tovori would reveal themselves, offer the benefits of their advanced science and orderly society. These humans, as their species identifier tagged them, would likely be grateful, eager to learn. They would be a straightforward entry into the galactic community. Prepare the first contact shuttle, Kale said. I will lead. Dr. Vora, accompany me. A full tactical escort, but weapons are to remain subdued. We are here to enlighten, not to conquer. The shuttle, a sleek silver teardrop, detached from the Star Treader and descended. It broke through the atmosphere with a whisper of advanced dampeners, unlike the fiery plumes of human re-entry. Below, the details of the colony became clear. Neat, winding paths connected buildings with gently sloping roofs. Gardens were arranged in concentric circles, bursting with color. Small bridges arched over clear streams. There were no roads for vehicles, only walkways. The air, when the shuttle's outer hatch cycled open, was shockingly rich and clean, filled with the scent of growing things and damp earth. The Tovori exit ramp extended, and Kale walked down, his uniform stark and formal against the vibrant green. Dr. Vora followed, a scanner pad held discreetly in her hand. A line of Tavori warriors in polished armor flanked them, their presence imposing and utterly alien to the landscape. They had landed in a central clearing. For a few moments, there was only the sound of wind and distant birds. Then, figures emerged from between the buildings. They walked calmly, without panic. They were bipedal, slightly shorter than the average Tavori, with a variety of skin tones. Their clothing was simple, functional, made of woven plant fibers, and treated leathers dotted their head was a man who moved with a quiet, grounded assurance. His name was Jin. His eyes were dark and observant, taking in the shuttle, the armed guards, Commander Kale, all with the same measured attention. He raised a hand, palm open, not in a wave, but in a gesture that seemed to simply acknowledge their presence. "Greetings," Jin said. His voice was calm, his words translated by a small device on his belt that had picked up the Tavori S-open frequency. "You are from far away." Kale stepped forward, his own translator emitting a more mechanical version of his speech. "I am Commander Kale of the Tavori Exploration Fleet. You stand in the presence of a Class 4 spacefaring civilization. We come in peace, to initiate first contact with the human species of this world." Jin nodded slowly, as if the grand titles meant less than the statement of intent. "Peace is a good starting point. I am Jin. We are the settlers of this place. We call it Eden's Threshold." He gestured to a woman beside him, her expression sharp and intelligent. "This is Mina. She helps keep things running." Mina gave a short, polite nod, her eyes analytically scanning the shuttle's hull material. "Your vessel's propulsion system leaves no heat scar." "Interesting." Dr. Vora's head tilted. The human's first comment was a technical observation, not a statement of awe or fear. It was off script. "Your colony is efficiently designed," Vora said, her scanner buzzing softly. "Your energy output is minimal, yet sufficient. A commendable balance, given your technological level." "Balance is the point," Jin said simply. "Would you like to see?" The tour that followed was deeply puzzling to the Tavori. They saw no factories, no centralized power plants. They saw water wheels turning grinding stones, glass houses using focused sunlight, and people working with quiet focus. The humans were polite, curious, but not overwhelmed. Children peeked from behind buildings, including a bright-eyed girl named Sumi, who seemed more interested in a glittering insect on a leaf than in the alien visitors. Yet, Dr. Vora's scanner kept registering subtle anomalies. Faint, fluctuating energy readings that wafted on the edge of detection, like a scent she couldn't identify. They seemed to emanate from the humans themselves, and more strongly from the direction of a nearby valley, its entrance shrouded in mist and dense. Oddly luminous foliage. What is the source of the resonant energy in that geological feature? Vora finally asked Jin directly, pointing her scanner towards the valley. Jin followed her gaze. A soft, knowing look crossed his face. "That is the Heartwood Valley. It is a lively place. The planet is very old, and some parts of it are more awake than others." Kale exchanged a glance with Vora. "Awake?" It was unscientific, a poetic evasion. "Is it a mineral deposit? A geothermal vent of an unusual type?" Kale pressed. "It is a place of connection," Jin said, his words frustratingly vague. "It is not something we built. It is something we learned to listen to." To the Tavori, this confirmed their growing suspicion. The humans were hiding something. Their rustic simplicity was a facade. That valley contained a power source or technology they did not wish to share, perhaps something they barely understood themselves. A secretive pre-FTL species was not a candidate for inclusion. It was a contingency dot as the sun began to set, painting the sky in colors the Tavori sensors cataloged but could not appreciate, Kale made a decision. "We thank you for your hospitality," he said to Jin, his tone formal and cold. "We will return to our vessel to confer. First contact protocols require a period of analysis." Jin simply bowed his head. "You are welcome here. The night will be clear. The stars are very bright from this valley." Back in the shuttle, as it ascended, Kale looked at Vora. "Analysis? The colony is not a threat in any conventional sense," she said, studying her data. "But the anomalous energy from that valley does not match any known spectrum. It is bioenergetic in nature, but with a coherence factor that is theoretically impossible without a focusing mechanism. They are either utilizing a natural phenomenon as a power source, or they are being passively affected by it. Their vague references to listening and connection suggest a primitive, animistic belief system they've built around it." Kale stared at the shrinking view of the peaceful colony below. "A hidden power they don't fully comprehend. That is a volatile situation. We will scan that valley from orbit. If it is a resource or a weapon, it falls under Tavori oversight. Order and understanding must be established." Below, Jin and Mina watched the shuttle become a silver speck against the darkening sky. Mina let out a slow breath. "They see only machines or madness. They do not feel the song." Jin placed a hand on the smooth bark of a great tree beside him. He could feel the low, steady hum of the world beneath his palm, a vibration of pure, ancient life. It pulsed gently, curious about the new, hard-edged silence that had visited from the stars. "They have never had to listen," Jin said quietly. "We will have to find a way to help them here."